Hey everybody, we're excited to get straight into it today. We're pretty pumped. I've got with me some absolutely fantastic panelists, and we're pretty excited to talk about AI, automation, innovation, everything that we see coming down the line, everything that we hope is going to help architects, engineers, and contractors set up for 2025 the best you possibly can. This is the best time of year to start looking further ahead. We're going to try and keep most of our speculations contained to the next 12 months, but we're going to see we might end up looking further afield, which is going to help us better plan next year and know how to set that up. So for those of you who know me already, I'm Jack and I'm the CEO of Part 3. I get to spend all of my time working with architects and engineers across the country. So everything that you hear me say, I'm lucky enough basically to funnel all of these really, really interesting and exciting thoughts and clever comments from thousands of architects all across the country and pass them off as my own and get to sound smart sometimes. But Part 3 is a construction administration software helping give control back over that process to architects and engineers. And I'm joined by two absolutely fantastic panelists today. Ryan, you're a man who needs very little introduction. So Ryan is the AIA TAP chairman, just about coming to the end of that term, and leads digital practice at CMBA Architects. But Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm also a licensed architect in a couple different states here in the US. I've worked on about $3.5 billion worth of work. I've stamped about 150 million of that under my own license. So I'm still doing specs, I'm still doing, projects and stuff like that. And so that's part of what I do as well. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the AIA TAP chair. It's a 5-year commitment. I'm about halfway through, and yeah, it's been an exciting journey. I've had the opportunity to present at a couple of different state conventions as well as the national convention. So, yeah, without further ado, Jeff.
And Jeff Eccles, I think, is maybe one of the most popular men in architecture. That's what I think of. I know Jeff is just about everything. Jeff's been a podcast host. He's an MC of so many different events. He's an architect. He's a AIA Indiana member of the past. He's been involved at many different firms as an executive, as a marketer, and a salesperson as well, and has a ton of different perspectives in innovation industry as well. So in the most recent role at KP Reddy, formerly Shadow Ventures. Jeff, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jack, and thanks, Ryan. I differ from Ryan. I'm not a licensed architect. Went to architecture school, couple of degrees, worked in the industry and firms for 20 some odd years before taking a pretty alternative path. As Jack mentioned, I've been in executive roles in firms before, but now where I find myself is immersed in innovation for the built environment, is what we call it in the world of KP Reddy Company. I lead our masterminds program, which means that I am immersed all the time with innovation leaders who are, there are firms out there that have directors of innovation, chief innovation officers, et cetera. I hang out with them all the time, people that are focused on construction technology. I also head up our incubator program. And as Jack said, I also host our podcasts and our live events, as well as live events for other folks as well on the MC side. But all of that equates to me being immersed in a place that I love, is looking at what is the future of AEC or wherever you fall, whichever, the A, the E, the C. I'm looking down the list of attendees. I've met many of you because I've spoken at 20, 30, 40 or more conferences over the years and really talked about the future of practice and future of technology. And I still teach pro practice at the graduate and undergraduate level. So this is a space that I love to be in, and I love to have conversations like the one that we're about to have.
So we're pretty well covered today. I think between the two of you, we can cover an awful lot of ground. And when we're talking about innovation, we're talking about disruptive technology, we're talking about what's going on right now. It'd be pretty hard to go much further without straight away getting into AI. Now, we're going to try our best here to not let AI dominate the entire conversation. But the reality is AI is probably the single biggest impact area that technology is seeing this year. We're seeing AI impact right now, the way that our teams are working on their projects. And we're going to see a lot more of that in 2025. I think companies and problems that are just coming into existence right now are going to start to become standard next year and the year beyond. But we also know that AI has got this potential to go much further. AI has the potential to impact the way we do business. It has the potential to impact the way clients view the work of consultants, architects, and engineers. And it has the ability to change the competitive landscape around us in so many different ways. So we're going to try and start more practical, more tangible here, and slowly move further out and hopefully leave off with some nice ways that we can start to think about introducing AI into our firms and into our companies next year. But why don't we start off, Ryan? I would love to get your perspective here. You're a guy who's traveled the country over the last few months. You're speaking a lot about AI. You're helping firms get ready for it. So what are you seeing right now in terms of AI adoption at different architects across the country?
Yeah, absolutely. And you have, where is it overhyped? Well, it's overhyped everywhere, right? I mean, there's things that we have CIOs and CTOs across the country saying it's going to take your job, and that's not technically true. It's still a tool, right? And so where do we see it delivering like value right away? And it doesn't have to be like an immediate ROI. You don't buy a new software and expect like 200% ROI right away, right? There's always like a curve that you have to slope into it. And so I always suggest to firms just get started now. It's better to start now and start filling in the gaps, and get people used to it rather than wait and wait and wait. Because the technology that is out there is, I would say, packaged to a point now where it's very usable, it's very practical. Um, but we talk a lot about the low hanging fruit or something like that. Never go after low hanging fruit. Always go after the ripe fruit. Like if you get some low hanging fruit that isn't ripe and you give to somebody, it's gonna be a regret. So the ripe fruit right now that I've been noticing in AEC is in the moment is marketing. It's not, a tool that designs faster or replaces creativity or something like that, or some robot. It has the right low risk, low learning curve, and that fear reducing adoption cycle that we need to get people used to the ideas of AI as a helper, co-pilot, rather than like a design enforcing robot. Like I'm making the argument that people have to come to an aha moment where they see its use as a tool to help them. So it's frustrating to think that one day AI is going to design a code compliant, budget friendly, constructible marvel of architecture. Like that's just not in the cards today, right? It's hard enough to do that, as it lies now. So those are the kind of things that we're looking at, and all the states that I've traveled to, all the different conferences of folks attending, it's pretty low adoption right now. And so I'd say marketing's a good spot to evaluate on, and then some like visualization. So those are kind of the two ripe fruits that I feel that there are proper products out there for you to experiment with.
Jeff, that's right in your territory as well. Marketing. I actually haven't heard that a lot, Ryan, but that's an awesome starting point. So, Jeff, what are your thoughts as a former marketer in an architecture firm?
Yeah, what Ryan just said, I think is exactly right. I mean, we see lots of opportunities and see lots of use of things like Chat or Gemini or Claude or whoever for marketing purposes. And we see firms learning how to build their own GPTs so that they can silo information, which is going to be a big question always. What happens to the data? Where's my data going? Where's my information? Is it being protected? But marketing is a good area, low hanging or ripe. It is a good area where these tools can be applied. But I think really what we're seeing across the board right now, um, most commonly, I suppose is the best way to say that, is efficiency, anything that's redundant, repetitive, those types of things. These are places where AI shines. AI as a tool shines. We don't see a lot of generative design, although we in our incubator we do with just about every cohort we see some sort of generative tool. Um, but I think, earlier this year I sat on a panel talking about AI and AEC at a conference, and then the next day I think it was Phil Bernstein from Yale gave a presentation. He's got a new book out on AI and architecture. And what Phil said, which I think is very practical, it's very pragmatic. It's not wrong. He said that the best uses of AI right now are small, very well defined problems, solving small, very well defined problems where there's relatively low risk. You're able to manage that risk and you're able to manage the process. And so, anywhere that you can find a scenario like that, that a tool can come in and solve a repetitive, whether it's a calculation or it's research or it's iterating on design or whatever it is. I think those are good uses. We have one of our mastermind members who's a civil engineer, and he says, every day I come into the office and I think, what is it about my job that I don't want to do anymore? Meaning the repetitive things and, the mundane things. And he says, then I set about building an AI tool to replace myself in that role. And I think this person is a bit of a savant when it comes to how they work and their knowledge and everything. But I think that's a pretty good way at looking at the way that we can expand our use of AI.
That count as a low hanging fruit or a ripe fruit? Taking on all those little
That's
silos.
ripe.
That's the analogy we've got to stick to now. It reminds me of a meme I saw as well, when people talking a lot about casual AI, not in the industry for a second, like people saying, I want stop producing AI that takes over my arts and crafts. I want AI that does my laundry and dishes so I can spend more time doing my own arts and crafts. That kind of speaks to what you're talking about, right? We want the AI that does the administrative functions, does the sort of back office, and lets you be a designer, right?
Absolutely. And I think every part of an architecture construction process is ready for something to start helping with that, whether it's checking submittals or doing a little bit of color sampling for, a pattern or something we want to put on an exterior wall, like to be able to kind of kickstart and create an immediate Pinterest board, if you will, of ideas and really flourish, as opposed to the way we do it now, which is like, oh, I remember I saw this somewhere, and then you try to make it yourself, and you've wasted a bunch of time not really making any progress. Where it's like I'd almost rather ask AI for something and then check those results rather than have to write the test, take my own test, and then check my own test. I'd rather just check the test, right? Let AI do the test. And then
Yeah.
I can sit and I can give the thumbs up, thumbs down, and the speed at which we move is faster, but speed is worthless if you don't pick the right direction, right? And so this can help set those directions, and then you can go in multiple directions fairly quickly. Well, that's like a paradigm shift, right? And so where are these tools? How do we bring those into our processes and really pick apart our processes and find where all these friction points are, and do so in a way that doesn't increase more interoperability, which we're probably going to get into later. Because it's like, okay, now we're fixing a problem that we know is a problem. We've identified problems, but now we've come up with a solution that ends up creating more problems. So we've got to do this smoothly. And the investment needs to be there, and the everything needs to align. And it's really going to be a challenge for this industry to make all those kinds of alignments.
Yeah, I think it's also important for us. I mean, we naturally talk a lot about how are we going to use AI inside the firm? How are we going to use AI to do the work that we do, to create or replace deliverables, whatever that is from the firm point of view. But we need to make sure that I think I was going to say not lose sight of, but I think even focus more on how can these tools help us deliver a better client experience. because ultimately when we have this fear, it's just emceeing our executive briefing down in Miami last week, and we had people on panels that were from the owner side that were talking about this is what we see in the future in terms of hiring architects, hiring engineers, hiring contractors, because there are plenty of our owners out there at large scale, right? Large scale projects, especially that say, why don't I just bring all of this in house? Why don't I bring the design, the development, the construction in house? Why do I need to hire architecture firms? Because now I have these tools to do this, that, and the other. And so we have to keep track of the fact that anything that we're thinking about can't just be how do we do our work? We have to be thinking about how does this affect the experience that our clients have? How does it affect the value? And value is determined by the client, by the way. We often say, oh, this is the value of an architect. But if your clients don't agree, then that is not, in fact, the value of an architect. How are we using these tools to generate or deliver more value to our clients? And there's a lot of ways if we think creatively about using these tools, there's a lot of ways that we can leverage them.
I'm interested to know, Ryan, since you've been touring a little bit as well, have you seen any good examples of how firms are actually adopting AI? Maybe in the spirit of what Jeff is saying too, like in the spirit of better client experience. Have you seen anything like that yet?
So yeah, it all comes down to like value alignment, right? Like there's still things that we can value that we think are important that maybe the client doesn't realize are important, but we still have to do them. So in that regard, I want to just kind of put that out there. But in the other sense, Jeff's absolutely right. Like why do we do what we do? Who do we do it for? What are the ramifications of that, and where do we insert AI to improve that client experience? That was literally a discussion yesterday at our all staff meeting here at CMBA. Client experience is a huge part of our business. Like it in a way is the business. And so what are we doing to improve that? I don't know that I saw or heard a lot of people talking about how they're using AI to improve the client experience. Sometimes it's the employee experience, and that's where we've started with a couple things here. As far as like just workflow, not even AI, but like technology workflow. How do we keep our people happy so that they do a great job so that the client's happy? If we do a great job, the client therefore should have a great experience and have a great product at the end of the day. Um, I didn't see a lot of hands go up when I asked firms, and this is different every state, but I didn't see a lot of hands go up when I said, how many of you are using AI right now? And this could be anything, ChatGPT to Veris to, Claude or any kind of process that's out there now. And I would say at most 25% of the crowd raise their hand. I think it's good to point out that we are kind of just now and this is my opinion, the early adoption stage, right? So this is like the adoption of, to pick on Revit, like the adoption of Revit between '03 to '07. It was out there, wasn't really highly adopted. Most firms, I don't have a stat to back this up, but it feels like most firms started picking it up '07, '08 after it had kind of been rolled out and lots of materials and resources were available. I think that's where we're at right now is products are just now that are vetted and working, and people are just now starting to use them. I think in 4 years, I think that's going to be a totally different story. I think there's going to be more adoption. There's going to be more products that do a lot of different things that help take some of those little pieces of away from us that we don't want to do, so we can focus on what we do want to do. But right now, I can't say that there's a lot of other than the really large firms that are solely focusing on client experience with AI tools. That would be, I'm sure there's one or two out there, but I haven't seen that.
Well,
I
I had
agree.
a couple of students a few years ago. So I run my graduate per practice class like an incubator. And so I had this group of students like I said, two or 3 years ago that said, hey, you know what we're going to do is we're going to pull in the available APIs from like Lowe's and different suppliers, supply houses and whatnot. We're going to tie that to the Revit model. And what's going to happen is, as we design, we're going to be able to pull in not only supply chain information, availability of products, that's going to help us lay out a reasonable construction schedule, but we're also going to be able to pull in pricing information. And what I told those students was, if you can build that, you can quit school now, right? Because what you're talking about is answering the question that terrifies every single architect out there. I'm going to go through this whole design process, and I'm going to get to the end of this process, and then we're going to find out from the contractor that, well, half of these materials that we ordered aren't going to be available for a year, right? It's going to take a year to get them to site. And all of a sudden, our budget of $2 million, now that we've priced it out, is $4 million because of fluctuation in building material costs. And so what these students were designing was basically just a plug into Revit that would give us real-time schedule and pricing information and allow architects to be able to answer those questions for their clients. That's an incredible client experience. Now, the risk managers are going to go, wait a minute, we can't talk about estimates and schedule, our AIA contract documents, yada, yada, yada. But when a couple of weeks ago, Andreessen Horowitz announced that they invested $25 million in Pantheon AI, which is billed as an AI-enabled architecture firm, we'd better accelerate our thinking of how to use the tools and how to use them creatively and solve these types of problems. We heard from Stage last week from the owner side. You design these quote unquote sustainable buildings for us, and it goes through the design process. And I really don't know, depending on the project delivery methodology, of course, but we really don't know what this is going to cost. But even worse, you call it sustainable, but what are the operating costs of this going to be? Because I have a budget that gets me to close of construction, but then I've got to operate this. How are you going to help me with that? And so those are big questions, right? And maybe that's a little bit broader than AI, because there's all kinds of technologies wrapped up into that type of discussion. But in terms of adoption and thinking about how to use these things, I think you're exactly right, Ryan. It's we are, playing with ChatGPT in the marketing department, but there are people out there that are pushing really hard. I mean, on the VC side, AEC, the built environment, AEC industry has been identified as one of the top three industries most ripe for disruption by venture capitalists. They're coming, and they're looking for ways to crack all of this open and really throw aside that this is the way we've always done it, and this is how we're going to adapt to using AI tools in the way that we've always done it.
So how do we bridge this? We've kind of got this paradigm where I'm seeing the same thing as Ryan. Like when I'm out there and we're talking about AI, and you ask for some raised hands, who's using AI? I think it's even less than 25%, which is okay because we're still so early, which I totally agree with. And of those 25%, it's nearly all ChatGPT plus, the feature that Part 3 or Autodesk or someone released that's tacked on to a solution they already had. So it's just getting started, which for everyone that's going to watch this in 2024, that is okay. But how do we bridge this gap where that's where we are? We're using ChatGPT, we're playing with some features, we're just scratching the surface. At the same time, to reiterate what Jeff just said, because that is a big deal, Andreessen Horowitz are one of the biggest venture capital firms in the world. They don't half-ass anything. And this is the first time we've seen them do anything in the architecture and engineering space. So for them to jump in and create a solution that flips the script, instead of an architecture firm or a consulting firm with tech, it's a tech firm with architecture, flipping the script completely. which happened in the same week that Microsoft announced they're jumping into AI and architecture and engineering. How do our architecture firm and engineering firm leaders today plan for 2025 with these two paradigms? We're just getting started with ChatGPT, but meanwhile, the biggest VCs and people with the biggest pockets in the world, they're thinking 5 years in the future and they're trying to disrupt things. So how do we put that into an actionable step for folks looking at this at 2025, saying, okay, I need to take a step, but where do I start?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I would say you want to get an idea of how to use technology in your business, and there's still time left this year to do that, and really ask yourself, like, who do we want to be? And it doesn't have to be technology, right? Technology is the support system. Who do we want to be, and where do we want to be? And you have to just ask those really dumb but big questions. And then, uh, as Jeff mentioned, client experience, client needs, really align that technology, that support level to your client needs, your needs, and then find the overlap. So I've got this like diagram in the slide that's like a red color and a blue color, and find out where the overlap is, right? And that's where your alignment Venn diagram is. Um, uh, there's so many ways to like unpack this, and we only have like 45 minutes. So just everybody on the call, just realize there's more thoughts here. We're trying to unpack it as quickly and succinctly as possible. But that's where I would start. So it's like a diagram of like you've got to start. And so it's like imagine a empty circle, another empty circle, another empty circle, another empty circle, and then like a half filled circle, and then a full filled circle, right? You don't start at the fulfilled circle day one. It's not possible. You work your way to that vision, to those goals. And so that's you just got to get started, and because it takes a while, and it might be 2 circles before you get there, and it might be 10 circles before you get there. That's just get started. It's not that scary. You're gonna have to do it anyway.
Yeah,
Anything you
I
wanted to
think,
add to that, Jeff? Yeah.
yeah, I think that's great advice, right? You just have to start, right? That's where it all begins is starting. You've got time today. What I'm seeing in the industry, and some of these are very large firms, certainly, but some are not large firms. But um, you can, I mean, the first thing you got to do is have the leadership of your firm install ChatGPT on their phone so they can play with it, get used to it. Right. If 20, and I agree. I mean, I think it's 25% or less are using AI, start using it. Right. And there are people out there, there are consultants out there that'll come in and help you learn how to use Chat GPT or something like that, which, great, that's their business model. But it's a little bit like saying, hey, can you bring somebody in and help us learn how to use the internet? Right? Nobody did that back in the days when the internet was new and we finally had it on our desktops and things like that. Everybody ought to be learning how to use these tools and just start with something as simple as chat. Or if you're using Microsoft products, I don't know if you want to, and how many seats of Copilot you want to invest in, but I mean that's out there as a plug-in for your Microsoft products as well. But get people, and especially your leadership, used to the idea of using AI and seeing the power of AI. And another thing you can do, and we see this there's an architecture firm that we work with that has now, I don't remember exactly what his title is, so I'm gonna dub him the director of innovation. Well, this director of innovation that they've hired is a 20 something, right? This is a person that's very, very soon out of school, right? But digital native, plugged into to all the types of emerging technologies that are out there. And their job is basically to envision how the firm can innovate. And not only how the firm can innovate, but how the firm can help their clients innovate. The question that I asked my students on the very first night of class, for some reason, graduate class is a night class. The very first night is, I want you to go out there and I want you to look for problems that you see, problems that you can identify that you think need to be solved. We can apply that, right? What are problems that we see in our clients' businesses that need to be solved? And see if we can come up with a solution to those problems. See if your clients agree that there needs to be a solution to that problem. But we have to start thinking, um, we have to become forward thinking, right? We can't be looking backwards. It's like, okay, how do we adapt this to what we do? It's like, what does this allow us to do as we move forward? Right? A flip in the mindset. And Ryan's exactly right. We just have to start. Um, we're behind. It's no surprise. The AEC industry is typically a laggard industry. We're behind other industries, but that just means we need to keep moving forward. So I think that's the beginning of bridging the gap, but being intentional about adopting technologies, but first thinking, I think Ryan said this, first looking for identifying problems that can be solved, that need to be solved and can be solved through these technologies. Those are great first steps.
And
I
and if
think we're,
anybody, oh, I
go on,
was going
Ryan.
to say, if anybody needs help, like how do I even identify problems? There's a great book, and typically I give this away to the audience. It's called "What's Your Problem" by Thomas Wettelsberg or Wettleson. Um, I found that book really, really helpful. And so it's been a great help. Just again, just identifying problems, like literally like reframing and identifying what your value proposition is and things like that. So I'll just leave that there.
It's a good idea, by the way. We should also do a favorite books that would help with this space. There's a few. I want to kind of shift a little bit. I know we're sort of venturing beyond AI anyway. We're in all aspects of innovation. We're trying to talk about how to get started and the reasons why and tie those together. But there is a lot going on outside of AI. There's a lot of new adoption, and I'm seeing an awful lot of pilot projects. I'm seeing a lot of things get done on small scale with mixed success, but in some cases, really, really successfully. In particular, drones. I think drones have come an awful lot way. We're seeing a lot of technology improvement there, and robotics. I think we've started in the last sort of 12 to 24 months. We're started to see the first use cases for robotics that can be more autonomous, like seeing is it Canva who had the robot that could actually hang drywall autonomously, could work, in the hot, the cold, the day, the night, and the weekends. So we're starting to see other on-site technology move us forward a little bit. I'm interested in your perspective here. You've both got a different view. Jeff, I think you're looking really far into the future. You're probably seeing prototypes and concepts that haven't come to market yet. Ryan, you're speaking to such a good group of people who are interested in trying to adopt technology that exists today. Have you seen any good use cases yet of new hardware or new site-based technology that's starting to help the design firms?
Yeah, and it's I look at it as like, is it a low barrier to entry? Is it a high barrier to entry? And so how big's your wallet? Sometimes is how this stuff gets adopted, and so the early adopters pay a little more. So I'm thinking like the Boston Dynamics robots that can go in and scan your building. I'm sure that there's probably something developed for drones. Side note, 10 years ago, I was slated to be the first the United States first drone airport here in the U.S. I can't say where, but that was going to be really cool. It didn't pan through, but I think drone technology is out there. I've got a friend in Omaha, Nebraska that teaches this technology and has a company that can scan from a drone pretty accurately. He's getting better at it, so I see those things developing. But again, it's all is it affordable? Is it how valuable is it? Is the client willing to pay for it? What value is it to us? You just again got to do that value alignment strategizing exercise to see where it fits.
Yeah, it's so I look at this in a couple of different ways. There are certainly, if you're talking about drones or robots, robot assist or anything like that, it's big dollars, right? It's hardware. Um, but there's a lot of it every day being implemented, especially on the construction side. And then there's the other side of that is I don't think we've even used the word data, but that's at the heart of everything that we're talking about right now. Um, the other side of that is what is the drone doing, or what's the robot doing? Is it hanging drywall? Is it painting? Is it printing? Is it scanning? What are those things doing? And what are we doing with that data? And so, there are great examples like Track 3D that tracks construction process or progress based on your use of. I mean, sometimes it's handheld digital cameras, sometimes it's drone. It's not often, but it can be robots walking the site. Those Boston Dynamics robots are really expensive. The But they're using a combination of that data being collected by various methods and bringing that in using AI and very, very accurately tracking the construction progress. Which on the design side, like if you're doing construction admin, it's very, very helpful, right? You've got to go through and look at percentage of construction and materials on site and things like that. Track 3D is great for that. There's a tool from Aaron that uses, again, all kinds of scanning technologies. It's sort of you get to decide some of this. Do you use a digital camera or a drone or whatever? But they're able to scan and then use machine learning and AI to um, assess condition of things like bridges, like large physical assets, and then also track deterioration of those assets. So there's things like that going on. You've got people like OccuSpace who use very, very simple, and this could be very useful for design firms. It is useful for design firms. They use very, very simple, um, what do I want to say, sensors that can be deployed throughout a building to help an owner understand how their space is really being used, what the occupant load is, what temperatures and things like that. And then maybe that's part of what's developing the program for the new building or the addition or the renovation or whatever. Rokibo is probably one of those that you were referring to, Ryan, that is a robot on site that does drywall and painting and things like that. But what we see on the automation and robotic side is really it's opportunities for us to do a couple of things. Get in places that are hard to get into, get in places that are not the safest places for us to get into. So imagine how the Brooklyn Bridge, the condition of the Brooklyn Bridge was documented 20 years ago. How many interns were crawling all over the structure of the Brooklyn Bridge trying to document cracks and spalling and things like that, where now we can use drones and other technology to do that. So we see those types of things. And then we also see these things being utilized in areas where, frankly, humans don't want to be. Warehouses, cold rooms that are 10 degrees below zero. Somebody's got to drive a forklift. I don't want to drive a forklift in there. We've got autonomous forklifts. How do we speed up construction on a job site when we can't find enough drywallers to work 24 hours a day? Well, we've got robots for that. We've got all kinds of opportunities to deploy different technologies and hardware and software to solve problems that aren't currently being solved, make us more efficient, and make us safer. We've got things like Bot Built that's doing framing, in a factory. Their next step is to set up on the job site and frame wall panels on the job site. So there's all kinds of examples like that out there, and you're going to see more and more of that, and it's coming faster and faster.
Yeah, I'm starting to see the first design firms use these, but I'm yet to see, and tell me if you guys are seeing the same thing. I'm yet to see anyone do it at scale. I'm still seeing pilots and one-offs, and let's see. I'm not seeing anyone like massively jump into it yet on the design side. I think you're right. I think budget's the main reason. But have you seen any good examples where it has been rolled out effectively, consistently, repeatedly, or do you think the word we've used here is has it plateaued? I think that might be a little harsh because of all the great examples we're hearing, but has adoption plateaued?
Yeah, I would say look where it is effective, right? So that's it's not necessarily where it's not effective. So I use this quote at every time I get a chance to speak, and I say, make it simple to innovate with complex technology. There is no doubt this technology is complex. The way it works, the computation involved, great. I just want to be able to use it. And so one of those things, again, at our firm and at my previous firm, where we were able to use a fairly complex set of technology like laser scanning, 3D reality capture, um, that's something we were able to adopt really, really fast. We use it all the time, and it ebbs and flows, but we use it a lot. We're looking to upgrade already. It was the learning curve is very, very small. It's very simple to innovate with complex technology for that type of program. The next thing that we're looking at is the second worst industry buzzword of all time, digital twin or whatever. So these ideas of sensors throughout the room, and hopefully by this time next year, all of our offices, my office right now actually has like a light detector, a noise detector, like all built into an app, and we feed that into a digital model of this office that I'm in. And so we've got a client that's also interested in that, where again, it's very complex technology, but it's a push button for us to use it. We want to use that at, like, let's say a school where it's, standard testing day. Well, let's check the CO2 levels, because we know if CO2 levels are over a certain amount, like people get drowsy and you don't think as clearly. Great, flood the system with fresh air, and then we can check that throughout the space live, and like bring the CO2 levels down, bring the temperature to the perfect testing standard temperature. Right now, schools across America have no idea. No idea the air they're breathing, no idea. And I don't want to scare folks and parents. I'm a parent myself. Like, I don't want to scare folks, but like, isn't that something architects and our engineering friends should be good at? Like, we're
Yeah,
designing this
you're
space and
answering.
right? Like then we design this space and stamp it and say it's beautiful, and then we don't really like check in on it. You don't check on your kids every once in a while. You never know what might happen, right? So there's those ideas that are out there, and so look for ways to innovate, simple ways to innovate with complex technology, I think is the end of the day. And then my other quote is, the leaders will be movers of data that create and enhance spaces that enrich the user experience. We're movers of data. We always have been, we always will be. And the ones that do that the most efficiently, the most effectively, the most beautifully, will be the leaders of the space.
Not only that, but you're answering two other questions we've brought up today in there. The first was when Jeff said, try and figure out what matters to your client. Well, clearly what matters to a school board is test results and the education of kids. So you've managed to crack the single biggest motivator of their success. And the second is, I feel like we haven't got into it today and we're going to run out of time, but business model is changing. The timesheet model is difficult. It's difficult to scale for architecture firms. And you're introducing their opportunities to kind of price differently and provide a different kind of value. It's a different kind of consulting service. It's ongoing maintenance. It's future work that you can do to keep the building running as efficiently as possible, right? You found new ways to charge for new value.
Well, and sorry, I know Jeff probably has a great response for this too, but we also help it use it to engage our staff. Like, think about, like, you majored in college for something and then you graduated, and then like what was the next step? Like, so we want to do that at our firm, and I've proposed this before, so this shouldn't come as a surprise. But what do you want to major in at CMBA and like specialize in for 4 years? Because like people get bored or they master something and they plateau and they want the next challenge. And then hopefully they stay with us. But you see this at all kinds of firms. They leave for the next challenge. And it's like, well, we've got all the challenges we're setting up. Do you want to be like our 3D reality capture laser scan person? Do you want to be our data analytics person? Like, things that you could also be doing, BIM manager, things like that, things you could also love doing here and continue to scale and grow at our firm and stay here. That's what we want to do, is ask people, what interests you about what's on the screen here? Where do you see this going? We ask them questions. We ask our staff questions. Where do you see, your career going, and how can we help plug you into these things that the firm is growing into. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
Sorry, Jeff,
that's
I'm going to move us on because I think
go ahead. Yep.
we're pushing up time, and we need to make sure we leave off here with some really useful, tangible tips. So I'm going to come to both of you, and you can let me know who wants to go first. But why don't we, for the audience here and for anyone who's going to watch us in the future, as they look ahead to next year, they start to plan beyond next year. If they can adopt one tech trend, if they can take some concrete steps forward, what advice would you have for those firms?
Jeff, I talked a whole bunch, so I feel like Jeff.
That was only to keep me in check. That would keep me from running wild. I would say, something that both of you mentioned just a second ago when we had the other slide up there was business models. That was one thing, and then almost like career development was another thing, right? And so here we are heading into 2025, and one of the things that doesn't typically come up in these types of conversations is that we're on a precipice right now of this change, or this generational change, right? From, if you want to call out the generations from boomers to millennials, right? In terms of leadership, perhaps. But one of the biggest issues that we have across the industry is knowledge transfer, right? We haven't touched on this at all, but what a fantastic way to work on knowledge transfer. Why should anybody stay in an architecture firm or in the AEC industry? Well, because we literally affect the way people live, the way people learn. I mean, we're affecting the built environment. We're designing and building the built environment. Well, how do we do that? Right? There are plenty of people in your firms who will retire in the near future, we'll say. And there are plenty of people that are coming in to backfill those people. But how do you get the knowledge from the more experienced to the less experienced? You can do that with a simple chat bot. And we see this in firms that we work with all the time. So I would say in the realm of bolstering your own firm, I would consider using technology, and it's very simple, using technology to think about knowledge transfer within your firm. And Ryan, you mentioned data, right? Data. What data are you collecting? You've got data in emails, you've got data in Revit files, you've got data all over your office, all through your hard drives. How can you collect that data and organize it into something that allows you to transfer knowledge on how you do this, how you do that, why you do this, those types of things. And there's examples of that out there already. And Jack, you mentioned business models. The and this doesn't directly answer this question, I don't think, but the more that we can understand about our clients' business models, the more that we can adapt what we do to helping them with their business. And when we're helping them be more successful at the business, we are then, in fact, the trusted advisors, and that's what we all want, right? So we can research, we can use simple technologies. We talked about drones, and we talked about robots, and we talked about really complex things like Ryan said. How do we you make it simple to use complex technologies? A great first step would be to not even worry about those things and say, how can we transfer this knowledge? How can we figure this out for our clients? Um, how can we solve problems for our people? If you've got a 20 something or a 30 something in your firm that thinks about a career in architecture very, very differently than I did, I graduated from school 130 years ago. They graduated from school 5 or 10 years ago. They've got a very different view of being in the profession. So, how can we help them solve their problems using some of this technology, right? It becomes a very human thing. At the end of the day, all of this technology is fantastic, But the question is always going to be, how does it affect what we as humans do and how we interact with it? So don't take the humanity out of any of it, even as we try to figure out how to be more efficient and less repetitive in our work and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was going to touch on knowledge transfer as well. We use, I think we have a mutual friend common, Chris Parsons of Knowledge Architecture. We use them here. They've been a great partner with us. So we developed, so they will, you can like look and search our portfolio of projects. So we call them our baseball cards, your glossy, cover photo, and you flip it over and there's all kinds of stats on the back. That's our initial process that we started about 2 years ago, and just getting the process started. So we're going to get to a point where we can start like collating and harvesting that data. We're just now at that point, but it takes a while to build those muscles. And now I feel like it's one step easier to transferring knowledge. But that can mean a lot of different things. How do I transfer a 40-year veteran knowledge to a 5-year veteran knowledge? That's a different experience. That's a different thing that has to happen. It's a different solution in some cases. So there's that. And then I would say, again, just get a technology roadmap. I don't care if you have a consultant or if you have this in-house, but like just get a 3-year plan of where you are now and do all the evaluation and see where you need to be in 3 years. And it makes it so much easier. Makes it so much easier when you have a playbook that the coaches and the players are all reading from, right? Because so many firms, it's unbelievable. If you crack open the doors of so many firms, they do this yearly. It's not really written down. It's not in a place that all the people at the firm can see. It's not scheduled. New things come on that replace the things that you thought you were working on. And you need to be able to have like a roadmap that says, no, 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 my name is on this part of the business plan. I need to accomplish this. We'll get the thing that you want to do on next year's business plan, but I've been tasked with this. So many firms that just make it up as they go every year. So just getting a roadmap established is super helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And one of the things I I also do mindset coaching, and one of the things I talk about all the time is how fear holds us back. And so when we think about that roadmap, which is absolutely critical, we might be afraid to put something like ChatGPT or AI in there because what if this happens? The one thing that a lot of firms don't have, right? If only 25% or less are adopting any sort of AI tools or playing with any AI tools at this point, that means that probably less than 10% of those firms have AI policies in place, right? And so a simple AI policy, and if anybody needs an outline for something like that, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share one with you. You can just I'll send you a link or something. You can just go boom, 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 and we can use this as a basic AI policy. Um, we want people to use it. Obviously, we want to reduce risk. That's one of the names of the game in the architecture world. But we don't want it to go off the rails. So how do we put some simple things into place to make sure that we are using it responsibly, which means a lot of different things, and that it doesn't completely go off the rails. That would be something to add into that plan that should reduce some of that fear in adopting some of these things into that plan. Hey, okay, we put the, what do they call it, the bumpers on in the gutters on the bowling lane, for the little kids. We put the bumpers on. Now we can feel fairly confident that we can start experimenting with some of these things.
I feel like we're gonna have to do a part 2 with part 3, right? Time for a
Yeah, we're all
rebrand,
building
Jack.
out.
We're
That's
out of
it. We're all
time.
building out. On that note, I do think that was some excellent points. We covered so much ground, and we left so much ground that we want to cover. But this has been really cool. We've got tangible steps. We've got tangible tools that we can check out, we can adopt. I think we're hearing a good perspective through the three of us here, the experiences of all the architecture firms that we interact with. So hopefully this gives some helpful tips. And if you take anything away, it's start now, start small, and start deliberately. So I hope this has been helpful to everyone. And feel free to reach out to us if you want to ask any follow-ups. You can reach out to any one of the three of us on LinkedIn. You can shoot us an email, and we're happy to keep the conversation going as well. But thanks everyone for joining.
All right. Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.